This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on India's growth trajectory to become third largest economy by 2030. The participants are Avinash Gorakshakar, economic analyst, and Anubha Rohtagi, anchor.
India, fifth largest economy in the world at present, is on course to become the third largest economy in the world by the year 2030, according to a global ratings agency. This forecast supports the confidence expressed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has repeatedly said that India would soon be the third largest economy in the world. To discuss more about this issue, I am now joined by economic analyst Avinash Gorakshakar. Mr. Gorakshakar, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Mr. Gorakshakar, just a few days after we got the good news about India's quicker than anticipated GDP growth rate of 7.6% for the September quarter, now comes rating agency S&P's forecast that India will continue to be the fastest growing economy in the world for at least next 3 years, with its GDP rising to 7% by 2027, catapulting it to the number 3 rank in world economy from the present 5th. Your initial comments on this very encouraging forecast?
Yeah, I think basically, India is in a sweet spot considering the fact that, all macro factors have been positive for us. Basically, crude prices are now at record lows. Most importantly, I think with the 3-1 BJP victory in the recent state elections, I think political uncertainty in our markets has got completely cleared. And most importantly, corporates continue to record decent growth rates in terms of their profitability numbers, in terms of their corporate capex. And plus, the government has been focusing on many initiatives like Make in India, typically PLI schemes. So all that has resulted into a lot of positive positioning for India in the global markets. The most important part is the domestic sectors, the large infrastructure sectors have actually done very well. And that has actually led to a very steady growth on the GDP side. On the macro financial side for the government, GST data has also been very encouraging. That clearly shows that the government is actually being able to monetize the tax receipts also in a very efficient way. And most importantly, global flows are now coming back to the Indian market. China is one market which is being ignored, and a lot of money is going to come in from China to India over the next, say, 2 to 3 years. Plus, a lot of foreign direct investment is happening in our country now, which actually makes me believe that the next 2 to 3 years would be a golden period for the economy. And we could definitely see higher GDP numbers getting scaled up, which would make India, a new kind of a hot destination for global investors as well as for investors from the domestic market. So I think both public as well as private sector investment is going to see record levels, and which in turn is going to get reflected into better GDP data numbers.
Now, though certainly fantastic news, the S&P report says that this transformation to becoming the third biggest economy in the world will depend on whether India can become the next big global manufacturing hub. Right now, we are a service-dominated economy, but we are already seeing that the manufacturing activity is improving. In fact, for the month of November, the PMI for manufacturing rose to 56 from 55.5 in October. So, what are the factors that will propel, or even at present, that are propelling us to make this successful transition to a manufacturing-dominated economy?
Yeah, I think my sense is the government has made a lot of efforts in the last 5 years to encourage manufacturing in India. The Make in India initiative has been one of the key programs which has encouraged a lot of capital as well as domestic investment in the country. Coupled with foreign direct investments, even private corporate has increased significantly. And I think a large part of this has come in, from the smaller MSME and the SME kind of, corporates, which have been a key contributor in the manufacturing India growth story. We have been seeing many new companies, many new entrepreneurs entering new businesses. So clearly, I think Make in India has taken off in a very big way. I think the full benefits of this program may get reflected over the next, say, 5 or 10 years. And it's going to be a long drawn process, but at least the startup and the initiation has started. We have seen a lot of activity on the startup side, on the fintech side, and all because of our domestic kind of efforts. So I think clearly all said and done, we have to achieve a lot more. But compared to the global economy, I think India started late on the manufacturing side. So probably in the next 4 to 5 years, we could see good concrete results coming in for India. But definitely a big positive is that the government is very aggressive in pushing manufacturing sector now in the country. And for that, I think one clear input which I would like to say is that the government is very clear and aggressive about this aspect that they need to make India self-reliant and very much less dependent on global kind of partners.
Now, two crucial factors that the S&P report has talked about are the importance of establishing a strong logistics framework to what it calls unleash the potential of the labor market. In this context, how important are the central government upskilling schemes such as the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana and other such schemes?
I think, see, these schemes there earlier also, but I think the focus and the aggression of the government on promoting such schemes has now taken a new level. And I think it will obviously result into a lot of productive kind of reinforcement as well as impact on the economy. So my sense is, this is a continuous effort which will require further push by the government. But nevertheless, I think it's a good move. And I think you would be seeing better macro as well as, better kind of data points coming in over the next, say, 3 to 4 years. So definitely, I think we are in the right direction. A large amount of this effort has been done in the last 5 years. And hopefully, once the new government comes next year in May or June, after the general election, we'll see this process getting further kind of, aggressively promoted by the government. So net, I think it's a good move, but I think it's going to take a long time before we see the full results of all these initiatives. But definitely better late than never.
And we were talking about the two factors. So the other factor of the report has stressed on India boosting female participation in the workforce. Now we already see that there is still a vast gender gap in labor force and much more needs to be done.
Yeah, as compared to the developed markets, Indian women have never been promoted. But I think this government has taken a lot of initiatives to promote women across a lot of sectors. And on the corporate side, now we have been seeing that there's been a good representation of women directors on the board of directors of private sector companies. The government has also done clearly some sort of focus for promoting women across various genres and various business points. So my sense is that over a period of next, say, 5 years or 10 years, we would be seeing a lot of women related, businesses, leadership roles, women taking over. Already a lot of Indian companies, global companies have got women as their CEOs. So obviously it is very clear now that there is hardly any gender gap. But yes, the gap between the male and the female gender gap is definitely big. It can only be narrowed down only over the next, say, 5 to 10 years. But yes, the process has begun. So that's definitely a good positive, for the economy.
Now, in the past few years, we have seen the center's emphasis on expanding digitization and giving incentives to encourage the startup ecosystem. How important are these two in achieving the target of becoming the world's third largest economy?
Yeah, I think fintech is one of the stronger points for India. I mean, our UPI is now globally recognized. In fact, we are better than even developed countries like US on this fact. And most importantly, fintech has now started impacting almost everybody in our country. The UPI has now become a norm for most of the people for transacting, their payments. Plus, what has happened is fintech has reduced, costs for not only the Indian population, but it has also reduced the cost for Indian corporates. In fact, manufacturing companies have also now started focusing on fintech because they have realized that if they want to scale up their business opportunity, they cannot ignore the fintech opportunity. On the payment side, we have got several private sector companies which have now entered the markets and made transactions very simple. That not only saves time, it also saves a lot of money. And most importantly, now fintech is slowly entering even rural markets, which earlier was not, the case. So I think it's going to be a long story, and obviously it's going to be a sustainable story. The government is going to push many more initiatives, which will make, online payments, the fintech payments a very large opportunity. And that is the reason we see a lot of startups in India becoming unicorns, within this space. So I think, it's going to happen gradually, but definitely the size of the opportunity in the digital space for India is going to be quite humongous. So I think India is definitely on the right track as far as digitization is concerned. And that is obviously going to fuel the GDP growth in a meaningful way over the next, say, 5 years.
Now, a strong infrastructure, easing of policies to encourage domestic and foreign investment, a robust banking system, so much more. The Narendra Modi government has been aggressively working in these areas in the last few years. How is this helping in pushing India to becoming the next big global manufacturing hub and to becoming the economic powerhouse that it aspires to?
Yeah, I think it's a long drawn process and nothing can happen overnight. But yes, I think the government seems to be operating in the right direction. All things take time. And I think at least the initiation of the process has started. At least over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, India will get a significant edge as far as its manufacturing ability is concerned. We have the best manufacturing practices. We have the best cost metrics across the globe. And, for certain sectors and for certain industries, I think India stands out. So specifically, if you talk about sectors like IT or pharma, typically, as far as infrastructure is concerned, Indian companies stand out globally. In fact, in auto components, our companies are globally recognized with almost all the relevant auto majors. So that clearly speaks of the fact that India's manufacturing ability is definitely very strong. It's only a matter of time that all these things, get bigger and obviously get reflected. So I think it's not going to happen overnight, but yes, I'm quite positive that the efforts put in by the Modi government will definitely play a strong role over the next, say, 5 to 10 years when we get all this reflected into, macro data points.
The services sector that we were talking about earlier, now it plays a very crucial role in the Indian economy. But of late that we have seen that, the latest figures that have come out for the services sector, they have not been very encouraging. We have seen a slowdown in growth in our service sector. So what needs to be done to bring it back on track?
So I think, see, services sector is dependent largely on what kind of developments happen in the international markets. As far as IT services are concerned, we still find that growth momentum in US as well as Europe is still little subdued. As far as the other service element goes, the domestic hospitality sector is doing very well. So I think that flow continues to be pretty strong. Post-COVID, that has done extremely well. But I think, services is one area which was already very dominant. And now the government's focus is largely on the manufacturing sector. Services sector will take a little more time because a large part of the service income is linked to global kind of development, global kind of macros. So, to that point of issue, I think the services segment as a contribution to the GDP will take a longer time to materialize. But yes, I think it will obviously be a very important variable in the overall GDP mix for India.
And how important is the role of the domestic market, the huge Indian domestic market that is there in driving India to become an economic powerhouse?
So I think, see, domestic market for India is one of the most strongest point because most of the MNCs who come to India obviously look at the size of the opportunity in India. 140 crore population offers tremendous opportunity for growth for MNCs as well as for domestic corporates, and consumption trends the way they are going. I would not be surprised that over the next 5 to 10 years, India would become one of the largest consumer markets because here, apart from the consumer markets, any new product or any new technology immediately digested and accepted by the Indian customers, and pricing is not a problem. Today we have seen that right from Apple phones to expensive gadgets, all these products and services are sold in India because the market size is very large, the aspirational value from younger customers is very big. So to that extent, I think the domestic market is going to be like a huge jackpot of opportunity for not only Indian companies, for even MNCs who are planning to make a lot of investment in India. And that is why, unlike other countries, where there have been some restricted policies in the Asian, subcontinent, India would definitely stand out.
Which sectors, according to you, are the ones which will drive growth in the next 5 to 6 years? And what are the challenges that India still faces in achieving its economic aspirations?
My sense is that sectors which are related to the domestic market, I think I would say that, whichever sector is domestic facing is going to do extremely well. Clearly, auto components, capital goods, infrastructure, real estate, cement, building products, these are all sectors where you're going to see a lot of growth coming in, and that would obviously contribute in a larger way to the broad GDP growth. As far as challenges are concerned, my sense is that typically environmental issues, regulatory issues, and most importantly, issues which possibly, have some sort of a technology angle to it are some issues which possibly would obviously, put some roadblocks in the respective sectors and companies. But otherwise, I think compared to about 5 years or 10 years back, things have changed dramatically. The government has also realized that if they need more investment, they need to give clearances much faster. But I think this is a process and this will obviously take a little more time. But net, I think these would be the sectors which would actually propel India to the next level.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Mr. Gorakshakar.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India's growth trajectory to become third largest economy by 2030. The participants were Avinash, Gorakshakar, Economic Analyst, and Anubha, Rohtagi, Anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsttalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.